Hola, 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 buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, cualquier hora es. Hola, 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 soy Tasha de Tasha Teaches Spanish con otro episodio de Tasha, just kidding, I was going to say Tasha Teaches Spanish. Hablamos Español. So, hey, everybody, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Hablamos Español. If this is your first time viewing, hola, bienvenido, mi gracias. This series that we're doing overall seeks to highlight those who are contributing to the diversification of foreign language learning. Because it's so common that society as a whole, and Black Americans in particular, think that foreign language learning belongs to a certain population. That's not us. But that's not correct. And so through our weekly interviews, we shine a light on people who are breaking down those barriers or stereotypes, whatever word you want to use, to show that learning a language is for everybody. All right, so today, guys, I can't even put into words how big of a deal this is. Because if you're not in the Spanish-speaking world, you're like, oh, it's just another guest. But it's not just another guest. I have today Ambie, who's like La Pionera, La Original, like so many words. Like pretty much she's famous for her work. It's starting with YouTube and spreading in other areas. But overall, I don't even know like your specific title, Ambie, but overall, she is an individual who knows multiple languages and for a long time has been putting out videos to give people advice or to highlight a Black American who knows another language. Just I can't even put it into words. You have a title? You have a certain wording for yourself, Ambie?
Linguist.
You're a linguist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like in YouTube, la gente dice polyglot, pero not everyone knows what a polyglot is, so I just say linguist.
Yes, ma'am. Well, to me, you like linguist times 10, just really showing the world that we can do this and this is for us. And so I am honored to have you. Thank you so much for your time. Gracias.
Gracias.
All right, guys. So to you, the guest, every episode we start with the speakers or the guests self-introduction in Español. So this is the time for you to think about, well, how much Spanish do you know? What do you know? What do you not know? And don't let this scare you because oftentimes people know more than they realize. So listen to us have this little self-introduction. And at the end, we're going to have the same conversation in English so you can know if you got something right. Okay? Let me pull up the questions. Aquí está. All right, so Ambie, sabemos tu nombre ya, pero ¿de dónde eres?
Yo soy de Michigan, de los Estados Unidos.
Ok, de Detroit o cerca de Detroit, ¿no?
Detroit, yeah.
Tengo una amiga de allí.
Oh, ¿en serio? ¿Qué parte de Michigan? ¿Está en Detroit o qué?
Es de Detroit, pero no sé cuál parte de la ciudad.
Ok, está bien.
Muy bien. Ok. ¿Y tu trabajo o trabajos? ¿Pero qué haces ahora?
Básicamente yo soy azafata de vuelo. La otra palabra en español es aeromoza para flight attendant, ¿verdad? Entonces yo hago eso y también yo hago tutoring por Skype y por Zoom. Y sí, ya.
Oh,
Pero me quedo en casa ahora con mi niño porque yo di la luz este verano.
Felicidades, tarde.
Ajá, gracias.
Ajá, de nada. ¿Cuáles son, pues, cuando tienes tiempo? Porque haces muchas cosas, pero especialmente con un niño. Pero cuando tienes tiempo, ¿cuáles son tus pasatiempos?
Mis pasatiempos, yo hago karate. Yo hago karate con mis niñas y sí, solo hago eso.
Parece que no sé, porque nunca he hecho karate, pero parece que es un stress reliever, ¿sí o no?
Sí, es muy bien para el estrés, pero también para el cuerpo, para hacer ejercicio, para mejorar el cuerpo y su fuerza, todo eso.
Muy bien. Solo estoy pensando de los golpes y la oportunidad.
Claro.
Golpear mis problemas en mi mente. Ok, muy bien. ¿Qué más? Perdón, creo que estoy pensando de boxing. Perdóname. Ok. Otra pregunta, tu familia. Has mencionado tus niñas, tu niño, pero ¿hay otras partes de tu familia de quieres hablar?
Bueno, mi mamá, ella es de Ohio también. Bueno, ella es de Ohio, mi mamá, y ella solamente habla inglés. Mi papá Él habla 4 idiomas. So, yo nunca hablo de mi papá en mi canal de YouTube, pero él habla 4 idiomas. Arabía, español, yo creo que mi país habla francés también, y inglés.
Que bueno, entonces, si está bien contigo, vamos a hablar un poco más de eso más tarde hoy. Parece que tu habilidad, hablar y tener interés en idiomas está en tu sangre.
Sí, está en mi
Es tu herencia, sí.
Sí, es correcto, pero yo no crecí con mi país. Pero sí, a lo mejor está en mi sangre, sí.
Oh, qué bueno. Ok. ¿Qué más tenemos? La última pregunta, o son 2 más o menos. Tu canción en español favorita y cantante latino o latina favorita. Y si no es favorito o favorita, una que tú te gusta.
Bueno, mi grupo favorito es Banda Recogido, creo que se llama Banda Recogido en español. Es un grupo de México, pero mi cantante favorito es Espinosa Paz. Y él también es mexicano.
No conozco
Sí,
el grupo o ella.
Sí, mucha gente no sabe que me encanta la música mexicana. Es un secreto.
Pero los nombres otra vez del grupo y la mujer.
Espinosa Paz es hombre.
Perdón.
Es
Sí
hombre.
está. Espinosa Paz.
Bien guapo también.
¿Y el grupo?
El grupo Banda del Recodo, no, I'm sorry.
Aquí está, Recodo.
Banda Recodo.
Banda El Recodo.
Sí, eso, sí. Me encanta ese grupo.
Es mariachi, ¿no?
Sí, porque mira, tiene una canción, se llama Me gusta todo de ti, tu sonrisa, tus ojos, tu cara. ¿Tú conoces esa canción o no?
No.
Es muy popular en México.
Ok, necesito escuchar más a música mexicana porque para mí no escucho frecuentemente, no escucho mucha de la música de allí, porque para mí no me gusta el sonido de la trompeta.
Sí.
La trompeta está en cada canción. No,
Sí.
gracias. Y no sé, y para clarificar, la trompeta es en música de salsa y todo de eso, pero suena diferente en una canción mexicana, no sé por qué.
Sí, sí, usan esos instrumentos más en la música mexicana, yo creo. Es diferente para nosotras, americanas, you know. No estamos acostumbrados a música así.
Es la verdad, es la verdad. Ok, muy bien, qué bueno, gracias por notificarme de estos músicos. Ok, el fin, the end. All right, guys, so hopefully to you, the viewer, that wasn't too intimidating. Hopefully you caught something and you'll get confirmation at the end, so stick around. So, Ambie, I don't even know where to start. I have my set questions, but never mind. Let's just, you've done so much. So let's go to the origins of your foreign language learning, starting with your dad, since you mentioned that. Did you already know that he knew a lot of languages, or that came once you started on your journey? But what do you know about his origins and how he ended up learning 4 languages? Then we'll transition to you.
Well, I didn't meet him until I was like in my teenage year. So
Okay.
I'm not close to my dad at all. But I found out he spoke these different languages through when I went to meet my little brother with him. And it was funny because he was speaking to my little brother in Arabic. And I'm just like, my dad speaks Arabic. And yeah, he actually speaks multiple languages. So Spanish as well, French, and then of course English. I want to say Hebrew, but I'm not sure. I just know he speaks a lot of languages, but I didn't grow up with him. So like we're not close. I don't know if that makes
I got you. So does this mean you have I guess Arabic is a language, so I don't know the right wording, but so that means your brother comes from that group? I don't want to sound ignorant, I'm sorry, but the group
I know. My father is Muslim actually, but
wow.
I know I never said it on YouTube or anything like that. But but yeah, he is Muslim, so it's natural for them to speak Arabic.
Wow, this
Yeah.
is so amazing on how language just really connects to culture and just life. And ooh, this is great. Okay, so now we'll start with your origin story on how you got started, because I'm sure you put that on YouTube. I haven't seen that video, sorry. But just a little bit of how it started with you. I do remember watching one of your videos with telling people they don't have to necessarily go abroad to get it. That you mentioned how in the beginning you would just always put yourself in those Spanish speaking environments and make it work. But I'm gonna let you talk. You know your life better than I do. So just talk about your beginning, why you even got interested. And we'll start with Spanish since you do know multiple languages as well.
Well, when I was 10 years old, I always say this on my channel too. A lot of people don't know this, but Korean was my second language. So I actually started learning Korean when I was 10. And that's because my mom put me in Taekwondo, and the teacher was a Korean guy, black guy, and a white guy, and all of them spoke Korean. So they taught us. I know, it was like so interesting to watch, because I'm like, oh my God, this black guy looked like me. He's speaking this language. You know, when you're young, you don't know the difference. So I was, in my mind and in my mother's mind, we're like, oh, they speak Chinese. Like, we didn't know any better. So I'm just like, that's what this black guy speaking Chinese.
Yes, ma'am.
They were teaching it to us as kids. So I would say I studied Korean for about the first 2 years of doing Taekwondo. And then when my mom pulled me out of Taekwondo because of an injury, I just lost it, kind of. You know, I only remember like basic phrases. So then I just kind of let it go. And then I got reintroduced to Spanish in high school. So in high school it was required, of course. And I realized I was good at it, you know? So what I started doing was I would go to this town in Detroit called Mexican Town, and I would go out there and just practice my Spanish with like the cooks, because you know, usually the people that work on the front lines, they know English and Spanish, but I would purposely wait for the guy to come out that cleaned the table so I can say, hola, Jose, quiero practicar español, and he's supposed to be back there cleaning or cooking or whatever, and he's out there talking to me. So,
and excuse me, I'm gonna stop you right here. So, and another, my guest from last week mentioned this at a young age. I've had 2 guests who mentioned it at a young age, just having the boldness to go out. So, in this scenario, you're what, 16, 17? How old are you?
17, yeah.
So you just caught a bus and said, "I'm going to Mexican Town. Let's go."
Actually, I waited till I got my first car, because I got my car when I was 16. My mom would never take me to Mexican Town, so it was only, you know what, it's in an area called Southwest Detroit, in Detroit, and it's probably the most dangerous part out of Detroit. So a lot of people avoid going there. Some people might not like me saying that if they're from Detroit, but it's the truth. Like, the numbers are there. It's very dangerous to be over there, but on the bright side, they still have Mexican Town that's located in there. So I would just kind of go over there just so I can practice my Spanish. So since my mom wouldn't take me, I'm like, when I get a car, I'm going
to Mexican Town. Forget this. That is bold.
And my Mexican Town was like a 50-minute drive from where, like, I live with my mom. So she'll be like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to the mall. She's like, it don't take that long to be at no mall. That's because I'm way.
She knew something was up.
Yeah, but it worked out for the good, because then I ended up getting fluent, and now she brags to everybody about it. I'm like, see, you should have been taking me to Mexican Town.
Okay, so 16, you started going to Mexican Town, speaking with the workers. What was next? That lasted, I guess, how long? And then what was your next level of ascension?
Then I was having a lot of fun with it, getting familiar with the language, going back to school, kind of like talking with my teacher. My teacher would be like, where did you learn that from? And, you know, so I was just enjoying it then. But once I finished high school, I moved to Atlanta. And my first job using Spanish, well, my first job, period, I was a Spanish interpreter.
Ooh.
Yeah. It was like my first little gig. And I can tell you this, I always tell my students that, and my followers, that you learn more by getting a job in that language. Once you can speak enough to converse, that's good enough to obtain a bilingual job, and you learn so much on that job.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Because even with me, like I took the, I guess, long way, or, you know, not traditional, but the academic route. And I got a degree in it. Then I lived in Spain for a year. Then I got my first bilingual job when I came back. And I remember this one little word. I don't remember what it was now. It was something like cobrar or something, because I worked as a bilingual secretary or reception.
Mhm.
And the woman said the whole sentence. And I'm like, ¿Qué significa cobrar? It messed me up. And it's such a simple verb that you would think, I done had this degree, I done this, and this. But I get to the job and don't know cobrar. And so it will, the work itself really will make you step it up. So that's the point. Yes, ma'am.
Because you know how some people, or I don't know, do you have students?
Yes, ma'am.
So, like, I'm sure your students, a lot of them would probably think like, oh, I don't know fluent Spanish to get a job. And you don't have to be all the way fluent to get a bilingual job. You just need to be able to converse. Good, you know, I would say probably intermediate level or right at intermediate. Once you can conjugate verbs and go back and forth, you can get a job in a language.
Amen. Because after that, all you need to know is, if you don't know, no me entiendo. ¿Qué significa? All you need to know then is just how to ask the questions. So if they said something, you can get some comprehension. So good point. And one thing I tell my students and anybody, don't worry about sounding dumb. Baby, sound dumb. That's okay. But do they get what you're saying? Do they get where you're going? Or do you get them? Do you know how to navigate and even use nonverbals? You know, whatever you need to do to get through the conversation. So yeah, good point. Good point. Let me ask you this: on getting that job, so it wasn't heavily restricted, especially interpreter. You know, a lot of places say you have to be certified, you have to have this or that. So how did you end up getting that? They didn't care?
They usually what happens is, well, I'll tell you, in this case, I went on the interview and this doctor, he just put me on the spot in the interview. I was so nervous. He was like, well, so today you're going to talk to some patients for me and blah, blah, blah. Mind you, this is the interview. So I'm like, okay. And I was so afraid, like, what if I mess up? But I had practiced so much terminology before I went to that interview. So I always tell people, like, if you want to, like, let's say you're getting hired at a police station as a bilingual person. You want to learn police vocabulary. You want to learn everything you can revolving around that police station, or criminals or whatever, because you don't want to get there and you're confused about anything dealing with the law. You should have already prepped for that. So that's what I did with the medical stuff. So when he had me talk to a patient, it was so simple. It was something simple like, oh, I fell down the stairs and ruptured my spine or blah, blah, blah. And it was easy for me to repeat it to the doctor. And then he'd repeat what he said back. And so he actually hired me on the spot.
Whoa, come on, Ambie.
Didn't ask for no. As a matter of fact, I went through this internship program through a school that I was going to, Everest at the time. And he didn't care anything about that. He could care less about a certificate or a degree. He's just like, he speaks
skill. You have this skill that I need. Forget the rest.
Yeah, that's how they usually are. Yeah.
All right, that is a great story. So how long did you work as an interpreter for that clinic?
I did that. So I finished my internship with him, I want to say about 6 or 7 months later, maybe 8 months later. And then I ended up getting a higher paying job as a medical interpreter again for a different facility that was by the airport. So I ended up leaving that and transitioning to that. And funny enough, I worked for Nigerians. So this second job, well, the first one with the doctor, he was a white guy. And then the second job, it was a Nigerian medical office. So my boss was Nigerian, the assistant boss was Nigerian, the manager was Nigerian. So it was really cool to work for Africans. But yeah, they compensated me well for my skill. They were very impressed that a Black American could speak in Spanish. So.
Ooh. Yeah, that is one. And in this story, you are young. You're like 18, 19, I'm guessing.
Yes,
right?
I was
doing it.
And it's funny because they hired me over, like, some people would think because someone's native speaker or they're Hispanic, they'll automatically get the job over you because, oh, they're a native. That's not true. It works out in our favor as Americans that can learn another language because other Americans are impressed by that.
Amen.
They are impressed by it, and I'm not trying to sound bad about it, but they kind of want to hire another American. You know what I mean? If they don't have to hire someone outside to do the job. If you come in there like, hey, I'm Brad Johnson, I speak fluent Mandarin, you know, and then you have Wong come in and he's a native speaker, don't just automatically think the native is going to get the job, because Wong have a thick accent that those employers don't want to deal with. They want to deal with their own kind sometimes, and it's very impressive that you can speak another language. So
no, I get it. I've never thought about that or heard it, but I can get that, because if one thing about it, the native knows their language fluently, obviously, but that may mean they have a little difficulty in knowing what the English person is saying to them a little bit, or just it may take a couple more barriers culturally and everything else. So can you even get my English message to know what to say in your tongue? So I guess, and that barrier works both ways, but my point is I get it.
Yeah, I've had, you know, I wanted to mention this too. I've never said this on my channel, but I have had like Latino people tell me before, and these are usually Latino Americans. They'll say stuff like, oh, well, why would you learn Spanish? You know, there's plenty of us that speak Spanish, you know, we'll get the job. And that's not, and I know it's very, some people it's been people that said that to me. Actually, a pilot said that to me at work before, and he's a Spanish speaker from Colombia. And he was like, oh, well, it'll be very hard for you to get like a Spanish speaking job because they could just hire us.
He don't even know your life. He don't know your story. Be quiet.
He don't know that I know more Spanish. I know more languages that he could probably think of. So I would still get the job over him regardless.
This is ridiculous. Now, you say Colombia, so was he Afro-Latino? You know, it's a lot of Afro-Latinos here.
He was white.
Just regular, okay.
But it's, a lot of Afro-Latino, Afro-Colombians around. But yeah, he was a white Colombian actually, but he said that to me. He was like, they could just hire us, so why go through the trouble?
And you know, I wonder, because I talk to people, my guests, about this. We normally just talk, when I have this conversation, it involves a European American, a white American. But in this case with him too, was he saying that to insult you? Did it not register to him that was an insult? Or he just thought it was a regular conversation?
No, what happened was I was speaking with a gate agent because he was one of the pilots that's worked with me. But I was talking with the gate agent, and she asked me to talk to a passenger in Spanish. So because we were talking, and she knew that I spoke Spanish. So the pilot was right there, and he's like, well, I speak Spanish, you know. And so I ignore him, and I start talking to the passenger. So after that, he was like, wow, how did you learn?
He felt insulted. He felt insulted because somebody overlooked him in his tongue.
Yeah, and so it's just, and that goes back to, again, the gate agent was American. She know that he was probably Latino, but other Americans are impressed when other Americans can speak different languages. Sometimes that can work in your advantage. You know, people are proud of people, and that's a natural thing. So, you know, he probably felt some type of way. But
A hater.
Once we got on the plane, he's like, oh, so how did you learn and why? You know, because they'll just hire us. I'm just like, okay, sir. Like, he was like my captain, so I'm not about to be.
He don't know nothing about your life, that you've been doing this since 18. You went to Mexican town. Be quiet. Anyway, okay, let me move on before I get back. So I haven't even asked you any of these questions. Well, I've asked you maybe a couple of them. So, okay, so now we went to Mexican town. We came to Atlanta. We got our first job. We got our second job at the Nigerian place. What was after that?
After that, what happened? I traveled for the first time out of the country, and I went to South America, Uruguay. I stayed there for weeks with my ex-husband, and yeah, that was a great experience. So while I was in Uruguay, a lot of the Uruguayans, they would ask me if I was Brazilian, or they'll try to talk Portuguese with me. And my ex-husband would be like, my wife, he will tell them in Spanish, like, mi esposa americana. You know, ella no es de Brazil. And they'll just be like, no, are you sure she looks Brazilian?
Yeah, wouldn't he know?
I know. And so it was so crazy because while I was there, I'm just like, why do people keep thinking I'm lying? I'm not lying about being American. Like, that's so crazy. Like, this blew me away. And so that actually prompted me to research Brazil. And I'm like, well, what is it? Why do they keep saying that? And come to find out, because all the Black people that are in Uruguay are from Brazil. So they kept.
That's all they knew.
And then they don't, and then it's so funny because even his family that was in Uruguay, they were just like, wow, like hay negros en los Estados Unidos. I'll never forget that. They're like, there's black people in the United States. I'm like, what?
That makes sense because to me, vice versa, it's a lot of U.S. people, United States residents that don't know they're Afro Latinos because when we consume Latino media, it's all white, and so I imagine whatever they're watching in Uruguay, Colombia, whatever from Los Estados Unidos looks white.
Yes,
so I'm surprised they don't know. I'm not surprised.
And I was so shocked. And that actually is the reason why I started learning Portuguese. So a lot of people don't know that, but that's why when I came back to the States, I want to say about 6 months later, I was still working for the Nigerians. But my Nigerian boss had told me, well, you should learn Portuguese. And then she also informed me that there was a Portuguese speaking country in Africa called Angola. And so I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So I ended up studying Portuguese at Atlanta International Language Institute. So that's how I learned Portuguese because in Uruguay, everybody kept saying I was lying. They're like, no, but I had them. I'm like, no. And they talk to me in Portuguese.
And my guest from last week mentioned that she went to I think it was Cubano restaurant and where she is, and the dude was like, "¿De dónde eres?" And she was like, "Soy de aquí," and he was like, "No," and shame on you for lying to say you're not Cuban or whatever. Like she didn't have time to explain. But I imagine, and this is the thing about life and humans. Sometimes when people think another place is better, they want to associate themselves with it. So I imagine there are Latinos that maybe do lie or pass or whatever, because the United States, the El Norte, has such a nice, it's a nice thought in their mind. So there probably are people that do lie because culturally, Black American, white American, we've had people in our groups that pass for the other because they think it's better. Yeah. So there are probably a lot of people that really do lie. I don't know any. I hadn't really heard it too much in Latin America, but I guess it's a real thing.
They'll say like, oh, my mom's American or my dad's American, and it's not true. So I don't know why they would think I'm lying, but then this lady at the market, she was like, oh, speak English then. And it's just so funny. Even though
she probably didn't even know that much English herself. How you gonna tell me
any English? No.
So you could have said gibberish and she would
And I said in English, like, what do you want me to say? My husband, he's just like, wow,
Whoa, ridiculous. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to one of these formal questions, but I've gotten so much gold just from that.
Can I just give me 30 seconds after?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And to you, the viewer, just hang tight. We'll be right back. But I don't really know how to take myself off this camera, so I'm gonna be here. But hopefully you all are enjoying this. I'm sure she's going to mention this later, but you can go to YouTube and follow Ambie's journey. I think she's been doing this since 2020. I don't know, 6 years as far as being on YouTube. So she'll talk about that in a minute, but you can already go ahead and be looking at her YouTube channel to get all these good gold nuggets and subscribe, of course. Duh. Okay, she's back. Great. All right, Ambie. So I'm going to go ahead and ask an official or a formal question because out of listening to you, you never got formal training in Spanish. Is that correct?
Yes, I've never
got a degree or okay. Yeah. So how did you overcome things that were difficult if it wasn't through going to ask a teacher or, blah, blah, blah. Especially in the beginning and maybe even when you were a pro, stuff you still came across. How did you get over, I guess, what were some difficulties, number one? Things about the language that were most difficult, and then how did you overcome them, especially since you weren't in a formal program?
Well, I'll tell you this: comprehension was a big difficulty for me. I think with most students it is in the beginning. So my issue was I knew how to speak, I didn't know how to comprehend, and that's because I did practice talking so much, but I never really I would listen to music and stuff, but it would be hard for me to comprehend when I'm out in the streets with a native, especially if they were coming from Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic or Cuba. It sounded like a bunch of gibberish, and it would embarrass me. I'm like, I can understand them. So to overcome that, what I did was I started watching interviews of my favorite artists. So like Daddy Yankee, this is back then. I would listen to Daddy Yankee. This rapper that was called El Príncipe in Puerto Rico, Coscuela. I would watch his interview. Don Omar, because they talk fast.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just watch their interviews, and that actually helped me start comprehending better. Also, translating rap lyrics in Spanish, that helped me a lot. And also, I ended up making Dominican friends back then too. So I had like my friend Soyla. I would go to her house with her whole Dominican family. They're Black, by the way. And I would go over there, and just hearing them talk, it helped me so much. Like, it helped me a lot. So yeah.
I have two questions that have come to mind with that. Number one, for me, one thing that helped me in the beginning is finding a country to connect with. And so for me, it was Cuba because of Celia Cruz. And of course, realizing there were Afro-Cubanos, blah, blah, blah. So that's the country I connected with. So that helped me like feel connected more to the language. Do you have, and especially in the beginning, maybe you have a lot, but was there ever a specific culture you felt kind of close to, like that you could relate to well in this journey?
Puerto Rico. Because back then, like 10 years ago, I did stay in Puerto Rico with my aunt. So just a few years ago, that wasn't my first time being in Puerto Rico. Like, I actually stayed there years ago with my aunt. It was actually right before I went to Uruguay. It was before I got married, actually, too. And yeah, I went there, and that actually was my first experience hearing people talk so fast and use Spanish in a way that I was not familiar with. Because mind you, I had only practiced with Mexicans when I was in high school. So Puerto Rico was a whole new world for me. I'm like, do I even speak Spanish? Like, I don't understand anything. And yeah, and I just remember crying. Like, my aunt, she at back then she spoke really, really good Spanish. But her job, she worked at an American government place, so she usually talked English there. But I remember crying. She never saw me cry because she would brag about me, but I would cry. Like, I would go into the room. This was in Puerto Rico. I would go into her other bedroom and I would cry because I'm like, I don't understand anything people are saying out here. So, and that goes into why I started listening to like Daddy Yankee, Don Omar, Coscuela, a Puerto Rican artist, so I can understand what Puerto Ricans talk. It was it devastated me. So and then now people even tell me like, oh, you talk like a Puerto Rican. That's because I started gravitating towards their Spanish.
Wow. Okay. The second question, I lost. I should have written it down. It's gone, but maybe it'll come back. Okay. Let me keep going. Let me move on. When did you decide that, hey, I'm gonna make a YouTube career out of this?
Well, years ago, I started the channel. It was just for fun. I don't think I've ever said I was going to make a YouTube career. What ended up happening was once I hit like 1,000 subscribers years ago, a lot of people would ask me like, hey, do you give classes online? And I'm like, I'm not good enough to give classes. Like, people want classes. And you know how you doubt yourself? And I'm just like, okay, well, maybe I can. So I started tutoring. I created me a little website. And then I would create more language videos, and like the crowd would build and build. I'm like, okay, people are signing up for my stuff. So this is like, I can make money doing this. And I think it just happened from there. So I didn't start actually making money from YouTube until like 4 years ago.
But you started when? 20 what?
Oh, I started YouTube probably being serious probably about 4 or 5 years ago, like consistent being serious about content. But before that, it was just silly stuff. What I'm wearing today, how to do this, and even how to do my natural hair. I even tried to do that for a little bit. So it was just for fun.
Okay. Well, that is really cool. I mean, and so through that you realized, hey, this can be profitable. Yeah. So was there a season you were only doing that was like your career, or you were always doing YouTube and something else?
I was always doing YouTube and something else. So when I moved back to Michigan after I left Atlanta and everything, I ended up getting a job as a Spanish interpreter at a law firm. So I done stepped it up a notch.
Ooh, yeah, that's real technical when you get to the law stuff. Whoa.
Yes, that was definitely a challenge. And I was doing that while I was in Michigan. And and that's around the time where I started taking YouTube serious. Because I'm like, okay, my views are going up. People like learning how to learn Spanish. So I would do both. Yeah, I would balance both.
Okay, I thought of my question.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
No. Go ahead. I'm just writing down my question because it came to me. Go ahead. You can finish what you were saying.
As far as like only doing YouTube, I would say now is the time where I've only just done YouTube for income. So pretty much now, yeah.
Okay. My question was, especially with you entering these specializations, medical field, like some medical interpreter jobs, law interpreter jobs, and you don't come from formal study. That's the beauty of this. Like, whew, how many hours would you dedicate to studying? Because I think I get this from interested people and even some clients I have, but I have to remind my clients and let the world know in general. When you say you want to learn Spanish and you want to learn for real, don't think it's just going to come from my 1 hour lesson with you. I do a 1 hour lesson with my client, but then I give them homework or activities to do outside of class. So they're getting more through the week. Yeah. So of course you need to do the assignments, but then you need to find a show you like. You need to find some, or even if it's just the movies you already know, you need to turn off that English and put on Spanish. So, you have to find a way to integrate it in your daily life. And I don't think people get that. I think when they hear about like Babbel, I was listening to a Babbel commercial the other day. In 15 minutes a day, you can learn Spanish in weeks. How much? Just 15 minutes? So I think sometimes people are maybe fooled. That's the word I'm going to use, fooled. So especially earlier on, like when you first moved to Atlanta and you got those jobs, how many hours of study would you say you did per week, maybe, or day, however you want to break it down?
I think you touched on a good thing when you said like the whole 15 minutes a day, how much are you learning? So I do tell people to start off with like 20, 30 minutes a day. But you're right, not when you're doing like specialties and you're trying to go into a field of speaking Spanish. That takes more time and you have to integrate that. So you said that perfectly. For me, I would say it's hard to count how much I was studying because I did exactly what you just said. I would constantly watch movies in Spanish. I would be listening to the radio. I'll be translating lyrics. So I never like sat down and said, I'm going to study for an hour a day or 2 hours a day. It's almost like every aspect of my life was Spanish. Back then it was. My television was in Spanish, my radio, my friends were Spanish speakers. The church I was going to was an all Spanish speaking church. Like, yes, that's what I did. Like, I literally turned my life into it. So it would be inaccurate for me to say, like, I did an hour or 2 hours. I never sat down and just, like, studied like that.
Your life became the lesson. Your life became the school. Right. Your life became that study abroad experience. You brought study abroad over here. So, right. Yeah.
Now, as far as terminology, like, let's say, for legal terms I didn't know, I would just simply Google legal terms in Spanish. It's something as simple as that. I've even invested in certain books, like especially with medical interpreting, there's books on Amazon. I did that as well. So I would learn like maybe a few stuff a day. I never overwhelmed myself with hours of studying. I just did stuff that didn't feel like studying. So, yeah.
I got you. That probably made it a little less of a burden because it didn't feel like, oh, I have to read this book. Okay, good. That was real good. Okay, what's next? You already talked about how it's benefited you personally, professionally. Can you talk about, if you don't mind, and if you don't want to, it's okay because it's not my business. But how has learning Spanish impacted you? I know we can really talk about other languages. After this question, I'm gonna move on to other languages. Okay. But how has learning Spanish or any other language impacted you in dating? Now, do you only want to date somebody who is from another culture? Or, I mean, obviously it's opened you up to even that possibility, but how has your multilingualism ability impacted that?
So that's actually a great video title. It's probably going to be controversial, but you know what? It definitely do play a big part in my dating life because I care so much about the languages and I'm always involved in a different culture to practice language, it's natural to meet guys of that language. So, for example, I'll say like as a flight attendant, for example, if I'm practicing Chinese or practicing Korean with a passenger, it is so, you have no idea how impressed they get about that, right? And so it's easy to become a part of that circle. Like, okay, like this one lady from Korea, I met her on a flight, and just like that, we exchanged phone numbers. She ended up introducing me to somebody that she knows from her Korean church, and I went out with the guy a few times, and he was Korean. So it definitely opens up more possibilities to date other people and just think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oh my God, that's the best way. If you want to practice every day and you claim, I don't know where to find people, you date somebody from that language, you're going to become fluent real fast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now let's move on to the other languages that you do speak, and where did interest come? Well, you already mentioned early on when people were accusing you of being Brazilian, that's what sparked your interest in in learning Portuguese, and you went to the language school in Atlanta. So beyond Portuguese, what other language do you know, and where did those interests stem from?
Okay, so Korean, I'll say this. So after the Spanish, then Portuguese was the next one, right? So after studying at the Language Institute, I learned Portuguese in about 3 months. I became conversational in about 6 months. And I was actually end up using my Portuguese at work in about 6 months. So if you speak Spanish, Portuguese will come easy to you. And so after that, a few years later, I started learning Korean. I got obsessed with the Korean dramas. And I remember I was learning Korean when I was younger anyway. But the K-dramas it did it for me. I'm like, okay, I'm learning this beautiful language. And then my main goal was to go to South Korea. I was like, I gotta get to South Korea to practice. There's not enough Koreans here for me to practice. I gotta go to South Korea. And I did just that. I became a flight attendant. I went to South Korea. I actually went probably about 5 times now, just within the last 4 years. So I started learning that. And then I met my ex-fiance, which is from China. I met him on a flight. I was his flight attendant. And he did not speak any English at all, only spoke Mandarin. And that is the reason why I started learning Mandarin. And so even though we're not together anymore, I'm still learning Mandarin. I found that was the easiest language grammatically for me to learn. Now, yes, Mandarin has very easy grammar. Yeah.
Wow. I look at it and I say that's the hardest, but you know it, so I guess not. But
I think the writing scares people, and because it's a tonal language, the tones are hard. But the grammar itself is kind of structured like English is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I guess I just need to learn to go past the writing, okay, and get over my fear. So I've told myself if I learn anything, it would be Mandarin. But I just feel like, look, learning, I know 2, that's hard enough, but I got to get over that. I got to dive into something else. So for clarification, you speak English, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, and Chinese.
Yes.
Mandarin, Chinese, excuse me. So with Korean and Mandarin, where did you learn that? Or that was just on your own, or did you enter another little language school?
So I only took, what is it called? You said it, professional language. What did you call it before?
Professional language school, Babel?
No, formal. I only took formal classes or formal language studies for Portuguese. I actually studied at Language Institute for that. For Korean, actually, I got tutors on italki and on Verbally. So
okay.
I have tutors on Skype, which everybody in the world have access to. So I would meet with these teachers that lived in South Korea. My first time going to South Korea, I actually met up with my teacher from italki. So she took
how nice.
Yeah, so that's, just learning different languages, period. I always tell people, the more languages you know, the more places you go. It opens up your world for jobs, for dating, for just anything.
Amen.
Yeah. For Chinese, I did the same thing. italki, tutors, and then my ex-fiance, of course, it was easy to practice with him.
Yes, ma'am. And so I guess now I'll ask about your travels. So listening to your story, you've been to Uruguay, South Korea, Puerto Rico, which is in the U.S., but still it's a different culture. Where else?
Colombia, Costa Rica, Panama, China, Ecuador. Where else? Dominican Republic. I know I'm missing some places, but yeah, I've been to a lot of places in Latin America for sure. In Asia, I've only been to South Korea and China. Vietnam is on my list next for Asia. But I'm not learning Vietnamese just yet.
That's what I was sure wondering. Like, is because she's learning Vietnamese? That's what I was just thinking. You know, speaking of, well, that's the thing about it. I don't know. You know, you mentioned early on in your story today how you and your mom would assume your Taekwondo instructors were speaking Chinese because that's just what, you know, in the beginning, that's all you know. So people assume everybody in the nail shop is Chinese, but a lot of them are not. They're from other places. So I don't know if they're ever Korean or,
they're from Vietnam. Like 95% of nail techs are in the States. They're usually Vietnamese.
Thanks for clearing that up. That's my question ultimately was, have you ever been able to speak with them? But I guess it's no, because they speak Vietnamese.
You know what? I know bad stuff in Vietnamese. So like I know certain keywords in Vietnamese language. So like I know black. I know the word black in Vietnamese, mi dang. So if I hear that, then I'm like, oh, who they're talking about, you know? If I hear mi chant, I know that's white. I know like American. I know I know vocabulary words in Vietnamese. So and I would say like hello. It depends. So usually if I'm getting my nails done and they're just talking, I always say thank you at the end, but I'll say it in Vietnamese, like "Cảm ơn," and they're like, "Ah, Cảm ơn." They get crazy. They're like, "How did you learn Cảm ơn?" And they're just like, go get everybody, all the other nail techs. Come, do you speak in Vietnamese? I'm like, no.
Off one term, off one word.
Yeah. So.
That happened to me though, because thank you PBS. They used to have this show called Sagwa about a cat family in a Chinese palace. So at the end, they would always say, thank you, share. So that taught me that thank you is share. So I don't even think you know where I'm from. I'm from Arkansas. I'm in Arkansas now, but I'm from a small rural community. So, you know, where do we see Chinese people? The Chinese restaurant. If they Chinese, because some people not, I don't think. But anyway, I'll go to the Chinese restaurant and I say, share. And they're like, what? Yeah. Look, I don't know nothing else. Stop.
Yeah.
Just share. That's it. So I get it.
Yeah. And they like it, you know, especially, I don't know if your students ever told you this before, but do they ever tell you how they come across like Spanish speaking people who don't want to talk Spanish with them?
Yes.
That happens with Americanized foreigners. So I always tell people, try to practice with those that are, you could tell, are fresh from their country.
Just got here.
Thick accent. Those are the people that are going to appreciate you trying to speak their language. If you just go up to a regular person because they look like they speak Spanish or whatever, and you're like, "Hola, ¿cómo estás?" They're going to be like, "I speak English," because they're going to think you're being funny.
You're stereotyping them.
Yeah.
Putting them in a box. Yeah. I guess we can talk about that. You already mentioned the pilot who was in his feelings, and you mentioned this case right here. How often have you run into a native of a language you speak acting up or cutting up or not being the nicest person about you knowing their language? I hope that question makes sense.
Oh God, it makes perfect sense. Actually, that happens. It would happen more so when I was younger. Like I always tell people I only get this experience with Spanish speaking people in America for some reason, like Americanized people or that Spanish speaking people that were born here. They just don't want to practice with you. And sometimes they don't understand why you're learning their language because they're not always proud to speak their language. They only speak it in the house with their parents. So I didn't understand back then what I know now. So that happened all the time, actually, because I would be so happy to practice Spanish, especially when I was like with my mom or my little sisters. I wanted them to see me speaking Spanish with people. And my dad, he already like spoke some Spanish. So he was, you know, I like to try to impress them. This is when I was a teenager. And I would run into sometimes people that'll be like, you know, "Oh, it's nice. I speak English." You know, or they'll just keep responding to me in English because they're trying to prove a point, like, "Hey, I can speak English," but they're totally missing the point that I'm just trying to practice. So that happened like it's happened so many times. So it was always like Latin American people. But I think one time on a flight, there was this Korean American guy, and I was talking with his father in Korean. So the actual opposite happened in this case. His dad clearly didn't speak any English. When I came to their row and I was like, "Oh, sir, what would you like to drink? We only have water and orange juice on this flight." And the boy started talking to his dad in Korean. Obviously, dad didn't know English. And so I immediately was like, "Oh, how sweet soil." So I just started asking, "Oh, do you speak Korean?" And so the dad turned and looked at me, and he's like, "You know," he's like, he did his he was just so shocked.
He was
And so I ended up taking the service in Korean, and you know his son got mad at me, girl. His son was mad.
His son was probably mad because you took over his role. His son's like, this is my job to help my dad, I guess. I don't know.
He was mad. Like, he could tell he had like an attitude, and he was one of those Korean Americans like that had on a suit, and he was like really proud that he could speak fluent English. So you can tell that he's like the type that he probably translate for all his family or
right.
all his
he takes pride in it. I'm the connection.
Yeah, so he was so bothered by the fact that I could talk to his dad. And you know what? When I finished with him, I looked at his son and I took his order in English. Because that's what and I think he was bothered by that too. So, girl, why he started responding to me in Korean too? His son, he started talking all fast. I was like, is he that bothered? Like
let me ask you this. I already know the answer in my mind, but I want to get your thoughts. At the beginning of this program, I stated that the program exists to show people that Black faces belong in foreign language learning. Do you think you get these responses from these people because you are Black? If you were a white person knowing their language, do you think it would be as big of an issue?
I'm not sure. You know what? Yes, I think so. But I also do think white people get, some white people might get trouble as well.
Okay, I need to start asking. I've never asked. I'm about to ask. Go ahead.
The only reason why I say that is because I have personally seen the first doctor that I worked for. He spoke multiple languages. Spanish just wasn't one that he was fluent in. He actually spoke Vietnamese as a white guy in America. So I would see that when I would go out with him. If he just automatically, he's the type. If you look like you can speak the language he know, he'll just go up to you talking in it. He don't. And a lot of white people I see that know the languages, they'll just do that too. Because again, it shouldn't be something that offend people, you know. But he would do that, and I do see people treat him like they'll respond to him in English, or they'll be like, "Oh, sir, blah 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 blah," and they have no idea. One, he's a doctor and he speaks a lot of languages, so he's not trying to be funny. He actually knows Vietnamese. So I have seen that happen to a white person. Now, for me, I do think it happens too because I'm Black. I think foreigners have this idea that Americans are, how do I say this nicely, stupid. I don't know. Serious.
No, but they do, because a lot of other cultures put emphasis on formal education more than we do. So I get it.
Yeah, they think we don't know anything. So, and I think there are a lot of racist people that are in other parts of the world too. So they really think Black people don't know anything. So I think when people like you and I are speaking their language, it's kind of like a double shock. Like, oh, you speak Spanish? And I don't know how Latin Americans do that, because there's plenty of Black people that speak Spanish around the world. But if they know you're Black American for some reason, they're just like, you? It's like...
Okay, so let's bring it on up. We're gonna round it on down, but into now. So from my comprehension, you are currently in Puerto Rico. Do I have that right?
I just moved back from Puerto Rico this year. Yeah.
Okay, good. And so you mentioned you have 2 daughters and your son. And you're a karate mom now. So I guess we'll go ahead and just wind it down all the way. Well, no. Let me ask you this. This is the last official question. Then we'll get to the English introduction and you mentioning your sites. Where do you see it going from here? You're currently a flight attendant, I believe, and you've had these life experiences. So where do you think it's going from here?
right now, so at this point in my life, I'm a stay-at-home mom right now. And I am kind of transitioning. I do like this lifestyle, being just at home with my children and mommy daughter, mommy son time. I enjoy that. But as far as my languages, I am learning German. So I'm taking that sixth language on. And for career wise, I do want it would be ideal to become an attorney. So I'm prepping for the LSAT in January. So wish me luck.
All right.
I'm taking the law school admission test in January. I'm not finished with my undergrad just yet, but you can take the LSAT anytime in undergrad. So I would say that's my long-term goal. I'm not trying to rush into it. I'm not trying to beat no timeline, but I would ultimately like to become an immigration attorney and work from home. Yeah.
You would take the world by storm. An immigration attorney knows 6 languages. Oh my goodness. Mind blowing. Okay, so let's go ahead with your introduction. Just saying it in English now. So for you, the viewer, you can see if you got some things right. So we know your name is Ambie. So Ambie, where are you from?
Detroit, Michigan.
And what are some what's your job or what are your jobs?
Yes, I am a flight attendant. And I do some tutoring on Spanish, for Spanish on my website.
Your pastimes.
Like my hobbies.
Yes,
Okay, karate. Yes, that's karate.
A karate mom. And like I said, you talked about your children, which is great. Anybody else you want to mention as a family member?
I think I mentioned like my mom. My mom's from Ohio, and I mentioned how my dad speaks different languages.
Next up, and this is the last one, your favorite singer, who's a Spanish speaker, a Spanish singing singer, and favorite song in Spanish.
Yes. So I mentioned the group. My favorite Spanish group is Banda El Recodo from Mexico. So love that group. And Espinosa Paz, he is a Mexican singer, and he is like fine.
And now I need to look both of them up. I typed it in, so I need to listen to something some of their stuff. Okay, so perfect. We've ended that. So let's conclude with any sites, anything you need the public to know to connect with you or to purchase something from you, so on and so forth.
Oh, yes. So on my website, ambiemethod.com, I do have language courses on there. So they're like 5-week courses. I just launched last week a 5-week beginner Portuguese course. So the lessons, it includes 5 lessons, and they're anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour long. It comes with worksheets. And yeah, it's a 5-week course. So it's a bilingual course, actually. So I'm giving lesson in Spanish and in English.
Wow.
For Spanish speakers that only speak Spanish, you want to learn Portuguese, or English speaker, or both speakers that want to learn Portuguese. I also have a 5-week beginner Mandarin course on my website. I have a 6-week Spanish course for beginners. It's all beginner courses for people that want to get started in these languages. And ambiemethod.com. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been wonderful. I am honored that you've taken out this time and just who you are, what you represent. And this sounds I'm not trying to be rude, but just taking in all your life experiences. May I ask how old you are and how many years you've done all of this? I hope that's not an insult.
No, what? I'm 20.
Some people don't want to tell their age, so.
No, I'm fine with that. I actually just turned 29, July 3rd.
What have I been doing with my life? That's beautiful that you've had all these enriching experiences in just 29 years.
I know. The last 10 years or probably 12 years, probably 15 if you include high school. So like the last 15 years of my life has been just capitalizing off of my gifts, my language learning gifts. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much again. This has been wonderful. And I know viewers, you have gotten something out of this. So muchísimas gracias.
Sí, gracias por ver. Gracias. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes, ma'am. You take care.
Okay, adios.
Bye.